Yeah, I figured it's time to take advantage of the fact that the computer and the internet are actually cooperating for a change. So hopefully it stays this way from now on, especially now that I finally paid the bill. Well, at least the past due is taken care of. But there was somebody in there briefly, but they've gone. So okay, well, again, late night. We'll see what happens. Somebody comes along. Will the this time I've moved some of the stuff over here, so I've got it within reach here. But little thing's been long going, stretching Star Trek debate on Twitter. I tried to bring it into the last stream. They refused to move off Twitter and bring it in here. I don't know why. But one of the things that was brought up about the Enterprise and how that works out. Again, I want to part of the problem here. Now, this is the Enterprise. This is first pilot version. You can tell by the thing. They don't have the spikes because the spikes keep falling out right now. I don't want to glue them together just yet. Not until they finally do a paint job. Then I glue them in. But what they're asking us to believe, this is 1/1000 right here. 1/1000 scale. This is also supposedly 1/1000 scale. This is, the Strange New Worlds version or Discovery version. I think we can see the problem here. You can't explain this away, but well, they got refit before. No, you don't refit a ship down to less than half the size. And that this is, Akiva Goldsman is one of the things he's kind of let slip. He said that they really don't pay attention to canon to it. Well, no shit. It's clear you don't pay any attention to canon because you're violating it on a regular basis without even realizing it. Oops. And he also mentioned that just how thin a grasp he has on his own timeline. He thinks the cage is still coming up. Oh, that's years up. No, that's years behind. That happened before Discovery. So no, that's not coming up, Akiva. It already happened. That's why this is all going so weird. Okay. And get this up so I'm not slouching so much. There we go. The thing, because I have the thing set so good, headroom, but I can't give down into the mic. No, there we go. But it's like, no, you're not even following your own established history, guy. Stuff that was set. Now, we're not even bringing up the cage and the established canon. We're not even following the stuff that was set up within your own time frame. Okay. But it also kind of goes why Terry Matalas was given so much leeway and why nobody really cared, because the guys running the show at that point thought every season was essentially a reboot. They didn't really match up to their own stuff. Well, half the stuff they're contradicting stuff within the same episode. What was established in the first 10 minutes is totally blown apart by the last 10. That kind of thing. So why Terry was left to run and rearrange everything as close as he could. With just a few little bits here and there that he was stuck with, he chucked the first 2 seasons right out the damn window, Then you get away with the lines like, we haven't had contact with the Borg in 10 years. You had him just last year and the year before. What the hell do you mean? Yeah, that's him. We're ignoring that. Which kind of, where I'm taking the theory of they are separate timelines. And the third one is it starts off one thing, and then as it starts to realign, it's up. That stuff kind of fades off and realign. And then the last one, and the third season of Picard, they are damn close to being realigned with the main timeline. And when that happens, we'll be able to dispense with the screwball story in season 1 of why Picard got his robot body. I'm sure the main timeline makes a hell of a lot more sense of why Picard got a robot body, and it would still allow for for things like Jack Crusher and the Borg, doing the biological nanoprobe thing. It would still work out. Like I said, the canon was set. It was locked down and set once production wrapped on Enterprise. That's your canon. That's the stuff that was set by Roddenberry and those he appointed to make more of his stuff, to carry it on. That's your canon. And yes, that includes the original animated series. Sorry, but no, it wasn't, the whole thing of not being allowed. It was not allowed for legal reasons for a lot of, because they were still trying to nail down who owned the show. Because Paramount did not produce the animated series. Filmation did. Paramount just distributed it. Because they did have, the rights, but, production-wise, Filmation made that show. And as such, they had a claim to it, to an extent. So you had to nail all that down. And that took, till, I think, maybe shortly before Roddenberry died or just after. Because that's when the DVD set came out, and it wasn't under the Filmation banner like other Filmation shows that have come out on DVD. They come out and you got the Filmation thing. The animated series is on CBS Home Video. There's the only Filmation logos you're going to see are in the episodes themselves. And there's interviews with Lou Scheimer and other ones, but it is now fully a Paramount show, and it is back in canon. The fact that they're making definite references to the animated show within like DS9 and Enterprise. Bro, you made it. Okay. But it had direct references to stuff in the animated show. Doge and Orchids. That's where Eric is from. Was Edo. And other things. And Enterprise, where, they supposedly see a Lamacha. Or no, it was a Sailot. It was a wild Sailot. But the thing is, that's where they kind of blew, because what they showed was a Lamatia. Very different creature, but I'm sure the idea was there was supposed to be a wild Sailot, because you had DePaul talking about how she had one as a pet. It's like, yeah, you had the Journey to Babel reference. So yeah, they were talking about Sailot, but you didn't see one until the animated series. But that, that's a production goof we can chalk up. They might remaster it. It was a CGI creature anyway, so who cares? But basically, it's like anything that Roddenberry was directly involved with, and he was directly involved with the animated series. I mean, the showrunner duties fell to Dorothy Fontana, but he saw all the scripts and he noodled them with it. And once they finally met, Gene, we have to start shooting. Okay, fine, we're done. Push on, let her go. And he didn't mention anything about not liking anymore to either Dorothy Fontana or to B. Joe Trimble, which is why I can get that without knocking things over. Which is why it figured prominently in this. He had a copy, and this, there goes the. But Gene had a copy of this on his desk during Next Gen, and he met with Bijo every so often. Not once did he ever tell her that if you do an update version, take out that show. Nope. It was still just as valid as it ever was. I'll get this thing so it's not going to fall over like the other book I just lost. That's going to be fun digging that out. So the whole thing about Roddenberry said, no, Roddenberry pretty much said, no one's allowed to touch it. Just trust me on this one. I mean, if someone pushed on it, I don't like it anymore. No. He had a habit of telling people ways to get out of an argument. He was doing this until he was a little kid. He got busted for something that he didn't do. But rather than get a big fight over it, whatever, okay. Just cop to it and move on. I got the other things to do. So he, there's something he carried, so, and as a producer, you got to have it. You tell people what they want to get what you need done, or to just avoid a fight. He really did not like having to answer a straight question. He'd rather, if a weasel word got him out of a discussion and back to his own thing, he would do the weasel word. And regard to him animated series, he would do the weasel word as far as to some of his stuff. Again, he also liked to hand out promotions instead of raises. So Richard Arnold was made head archivist. He wasn't paid any more than when he was at the Gopher. But he put him in charge of dealing with the guys at Pocket Books and the comic books, that. And I really wonder about, I corresponded with Richard Arnold several times. I got the letters here somewhere in the briefcase down there. We got several letters that I had with him. Started when I was in California and, started writing to him. But I want, some of the exchanges I've heard about, like he, in discussing comic books, because he was talking to Peter David, and said the goal should be to do stuff more like the old Gold Key comics. Huh? I don't know what Peter David's reaction is, but I would have laughed in his face. Are you out of your freaking mind? Those were the worst comics ever. It's like these guys. It was made by people who never saw the show. They were given a written description and some pictures of the cast and a picture of the ship. Well, they never drew the ship right. They had Spock laughing open and nothing. They had no. Somehow the non-emotion thing didn't quite translate. In fact, the artists I think were in Italy. It was told they wasn't even English-speaking people. They never saw the show. That they were being made. Early ones were made during while the show's in production, and it didn't hit Europe until it didn't hit England until 68, 67, 68. It certainly didn't hit the continent until around at least that time. So they're doing an American show. Yeah, they're doing all kinds of weird Flash Gordon-y stuff. For some reason, the one issue, I remember with the Klingons, they didn't have the turn. They just had the kind of jerkin thing on it, but they didn't have any shirts underneath. They were very what? Why aren't the Klingons wearing shirts? Just bizarre, You just gotta wonder what the hell's going on. But yeah, I suppose we could also, talk about ranking the shows. Which ones? I don't think you can't really do rank because they have their strengths and weaknesses, and they all come into, and they're also building on each other for the most part. What I think you do is importance of the various shows. And here is like where you get a better thing of which one goes, because this one you got to go with the original series. That is your bedrock. Without that, you don't have a franchise. I remember some idiots a few years back, especially when the JJ stuff was going, is trying to declare the original series non-canon. Without the original series, you don't have a franchise. You don't have a canon. So these idiots got ripped the new one, deservedly so. But you got to look at it like, and in this case, I put the animated series as season 4 of it's all the same package. A lot of them were season 4 scripts that were planned if they got renewed. So it's and the same writers and the same, so a lot of the same people carrying over, because of a writer's strike. And the rules in the Writers Guild, they can still write for animation. So these are writers, they need jobs. Hey, you want to write for Star Trek again? And strange enough, that rule's still in place. So you're going to see a lot of very big name writers writing for Saturday, or cartoons over the next few months. But that was how you got these, original writers writing for the animated series. But thing is, that's also why though the original series, live action, and the animated series, you can't look at that as 2 seasons, even though technically it was 2 seasons. It's only 22 episodes because they only did 6 new episodes for the second season. So you really got to look at it as lump it all together. It's 1 season. It's a slightly shorter season than the other 3, but it's still in the ballpark. So there's your 4 seasons of the original series. And to wrap it all up, I put in the Star Trek Continues as season 5, but unfortunately, that's not official. That falls in the category of it is canon compliant. But it can't officially be, although Rod Roddenberry did tell Vic Mignogna that if Dad was around, he would consider Star Trek Continues canon. because of the attention to detail and the fact they do the homework and stuff. And they made sure that it does line up, and they connected up things. That was part of the mission statement for the show, was to wrap up the original series and bring it as close as they could to where we find everybody in the motion picture. Because if you look at the time, there's only about a year and a half between the end of their 5-year mission and the motion picture. So they at most like 2.5, 3 years. But that's how long Decker says it's been since Kirk hadn't logged a single star hour in almost 2 years, and been a year and a half to refit the Enterprise. And so that's where and again, at the end of the Sergeant continues, that ship is beat to hell. So it would take about a year to get the thing back. And while we got it in here, here's all this new stuff we've been looking at since the Enterprise becomes a test bed. And essentially, it is no longer a Constitution class ship. It is an Enterprise class. It is its own one-off where they test all these systems. And that is where that is where I work in Star Trek 2 with the similar thing that the Enterprise class. If you take the page from real life, the nuclear carrier Enterprise was a one-off. It wasn't they based a lot on the Kitty Hawk class, but it's like this was a one-off. It is there was officially an Enterprise class carrier, a class of one. Later refits like the Enterprise A, you can tell the hangar deck doesn't go as far in. The engine room's completely different. Class of ships are not just how they look. They're also the capabilities. So that's also why my argument of how these guys, these old 18-inch Enterprise, they are not Constitution class. The proportions are slightly different, and I figure also the capabilities are different. And maybe not have quite as much range, and they'll be able to haul as much cargo, whatever, I've also decided, what's in this L? That these guys, the Disco Prize, it is a good John Eves design. This was his proposal for the NX-01. Again, scaled down a lot. More reasonable. Where these two guys are about the same size, but these guys are the same scale. So this one is slightly shorter than this guy, which fits in perfectly. Just have to. I think these windows are fine, but I just damn it. And I have not put any glue on this one, but it's also a very well engineered kit that I really don't need glue on it at this point. But I decided that's going to be the Yorktown class in my little headcanon. It's going to be an intermediary class between the NX class and also what I've decided to call the Bonhomme Richard class, which then leads straight to the Constitution class. It gets for a more varied fleet, and I think also and if anybody starts saying, "What about the Daedalus class? Where'd that fit in there?" After a chat with Doug Drexler, I figured the Daedalus class, that is pre-NX. He said that he always thought that was pre-NX. But okay, I can buy that. Because I was talking about everything for that would be what Rick Berman would have declared as a Daedalus class. But it's like, no, there's enough stuff out there with that big tennis ball and beer can thing. But it does look old. It is an old looking ship compared to the NX and so okay. It's a pre-NX ship that managed to hang around a lot longer. Think of it as like the Excelsior class into the 24th century. Some ships just last a while longer. Other ones, they go into the next thing, they get blown apart and turned around. Where some of them, it's like they don't. They're a little sturdier. They're easy to refit. They stick around longer. But as far as, again, back to the importance of the various shows, original series and animated series rolling with it, that's your bedrock right there. You try and poo-poo that one, it's like, no, that's your foundation. You don't have a franchise without those two. And then, the movies, that's where you actually establish it as a franchise. And because of the nature of movies, it's like, I don't know what you can do as far as, but it gets some stuff going. It does progress the timeline going. But I think I would rate the next generation as slightly more important because that is also, one, it's like, it gets it back on TV where it belongs. And it's like Nichelle Nichols said after the Richard Arnold did his presentation of what's coming up with this new Star Trek Next Generation show, and then Nichelle Nichols comes on the stage to Star Trek on Denver and said, "I just realized this moment, you won, you finally won." And we have looked at each other like, "Yeah, we did. Damn it!" So that got a big, rousing of applause. But that is, it showed that the audience is there. We finally get our show back where we want it, on the air, on TV. Of course, then it's like Gene was not in it. We didn't know at the time, but he wasn't the whole. He was starting to lose it a little bit. Apparently, developed water in the brain, amongst other things, and also he had enjoyed life and various substances to enjoy life, and they'd taken their toll. So that he had moments where he's still Gene, but he also not firing on all thrusters, and he'd also started to believe his own hype after a while too. Back in I think it was in the backside of the trade on Sitting There Forever. David Gerald, his little essay in there, or maybe somewhere else, but he was talking about how the Gene Roddenberry of 1967 would not have pulled the crap that the Gene Roddenberry of 1987 did. You wouldn't have believed that because back in he's a working producer. He's trying to make money on this thing. I mean, he's trying to say important stuff and make some meaningful stories, but he's also realized he has to make a buck. He's got a house to to pay for, and pretty soon, at this point, he's going to be paying child support and alimony to a wife. Well, he's also still trying to work up things with Majel. So yeah, making money on this thing was chief in his mind back in '67. That's what That's how you get the thing of him shoehorning his way into getting half the royalties for the music by adding lyrics to the theme song, even though they were never sung, certainly not at the time, and other things, and trying to merchandise things like the whole thing with the IDIC pin. It was mentioned in a memo. He wanted something like that to come up with, after in a memo regarding how Return of the Archons came out. And he said something about, I think we could have worked in some kind of alien symbology, like some kind of like a triangle and a circle with a jewel, something like that. So he's been nursing that for a while. And then he tried to shoehorn it into Is There in Truth No Beauty as, blatant merchandising thing. And nobody, or no, Gene, what are you trying to do? You're derailing things here. I think it was supposedly pinning a medal on Uhura or something. I'm like, what? Wait, hold. Okay, well, back it up. Okay, we appreciate you want to make some bucks on this, Gene, but no, you're not ruining the show for us. Okay, we're in trouble as it is. And they managed to force this into it, and instead of being some kind of weird Starfleet, they're trying to managed to work into the whole thing of IDIC and made it a little more meaningful. And the symbol is, I wish I had my old one I got from Lincoln Enterprise back in the day. But the symbol does, work into that because you got, a circle with and a triangle, and where they meet, it's a little jewel. Like, oh, yay. See, and it forced them to think these things through and make it, somewhat meaningful. There's actually, the two very different things combined and create something very, very beautiful in the middle. But Gene had to sometimes be dragged kicking and screaming to these moments. But I think also as far as next big important, the next gen proved that he could do it again. Mostly, he had to have a lot of help, especially and you had to get kind of Blue to remind it wasn't all you, Gene. We need some people in here. And after a couple of fits and starts, we got Michael Piller in there, who was pretty much the second coming of Gene Coon. He was a writer. He's a writer through and through. Berman was not a writer. He was a producer. He had to run shit. He tried his hand at writing, but he wasn't inclined to be a writer. Michael Piller was a writer, and all the limitations that had been slapped on other writers, and you can't do this and this. And he got to think, okay, no. This is where you prove yourself. You work within the boundaries, and it makes you a better writer. And he whipped the writing stuff into shape. So that's it. As far as because the original series really kicked into high gear when Gene Coon came on board. Next Gen came on when Michael Piller came on, and suddenly you're no longer dealing with stuff like Shades of Grey or whatever that one somewhat racist episode. I keep blanking the title up. I think it was well intentioned, but something went off the rails somewhere, and it just came off as, oh my god. And again, I'm not gonna. Don't bother in the comments about I don't care. First season thing was an excuse to have Tasha in a cat fight. Okay, but I think you got to lump in DS9 as even though that one. Everyone wants to, Ira Steven Behr on that one. If Ira Steven Behr was left to his own devices for the most part, that show would have been very different. And we'd probably be screaming at that one as much as we do about Discovery for many of the same reasons. He wanted to go off on this rather. He had to get reined in on certain points. And it was great for the writing because they're able to really, they were tackling subjects that they weren't allowed to go really for on Next Gen. Because they were able to have conflicts with the characters because they're not doing with Starfleet. But Jorans are very feisty. And you can have them screaming at Quark. So DS9 showed that, in a way, spiritually is more of a successor to the original series than even Next Generation was. Because they were able to do stuff that, a little more in line, a little more yelling. A little more actual interpersonal drama and a lot of universe building there. Voyager, it's okay. It's aged fine, but the fact it's way out, it's like Marina Sirtis said, it was Star Trek Lost in Space. Better science and a little more rational, but it was they're way on the other side and they're going to try and make their way back. It's Star Trek Lost in Space. So as far it's a good show as far as it is, but it's like as far as importance to the franchise, it's okay. It's there. It's got its points. And Enterprise, it should be a little more important because you're all filling in backstory. But they were prevented from doing a lot of what they needed to do early on because the network interference, the whole temporal Cold War, that came from the network. Because apparently a 22nd century starship wasn't futuristic enough. So they had to add this backstory, this running threat of a temporal Cold War, whatever the hell that was. And you can tell when they finally managed, when they jettisoned that and hit the big red reset button at the end of Shockwave Part 2. It's like, okay, the timelines are realigning now. Won't see me again, Captain. Hey, say goodbye to crewman Daniels. He's going back to his time, and now we can. To that point, any little weird anomalies and contradictions, we can chalk that up to this was before the timelines reset. So blatant violations, nope, they didn't happen. They got reset. And then after that, that's where we got to put our heads together for, okay, why does this not work? Like them seeing Romulan ships cloak and uncloak. Long before Balance of Terror. And there is a way to explain this. Make a note, okay? What they were quoting in Balance of Terror was the general historical texts. General historical texts are not going to go into specifics of capabilities of ships and and other things like that, and stuff that might still be a little classified. And I think that would also cover cloaking devices. After 100 years, nobody else was doing them. As far as Spock's concerned, it was pretty much theoretical. Nobody was doing this stuff anymore. And it's also not something you'd have necessarily flat out in the history books. Now, if you had someone who was, some Starfleet historian whose specialty was the history of the Romulan War, he'd be able to, oh yeah, they had that. He'd be able to fill in a lot of blanks and everything. But as far as just general history, no, it really is not that shocking that nobody knew about the cloaking devices at that time, because it's also not something you necessarily want to plet out right there, in the World Book Encyclopedia. Oh, these ships could cloak. You wouldn't see them until they're on you and opening fire. So yeah, it's not out of line. It's a little odd, but it's not out of line. It's perfectly normal that they wouldn't necessarily disclose that in just general history. And after 100 years, it's like, it never came up. We haven't seen the Romulans in 100 years. So, who's going to think, oh, they used to be able to quote them. They what? But they did, maintain the fact that nobody knowingly saw a Romulan. They saw Vulcan instead of Romulans posing as Vulcans. But, they've got to, they have no idea they were Romulans. But look at Spock's expression once the Romulan, that Romulan commander comes up on screen. And you can kind of think, aha, that explains a lot. Because I'm sure they came about, in Vulcan history class, there are things, and why he would know what he did about the Romulans. Yeah, they were an offshoot of, we think there may be an offshoot of Vulcan race that went off and they maintained their war like thing. Didn't even know about ancient Vulcan history where they virtually wiped themselves out because of their passions. So that's why in the briefing room, Spock is able to start reeling stuff up. Yeah, if they maintain the Vulcan, if these are enough, they've maintained their martial velocity, then we are screwed. If we back down, we are screwed. So we got to take this guy out and take him out fast. Like, are you Spock? Are you happy? Yes. It's like we need to do something now, or we are screwed. I mean, if you look at that, the exchange in the brief, that is the most intense we see Spock in pretty much the entire show to that point. But yeah, Enterprise, it's like, as far as importance to the franchise, I would put it a little above that of a Voyager, because you're filling in a lot of backstory there and you're explaining things here and there. You even got to explain how the Defiant, how did you get an Enterprise, right, in Mirror that close if you're in an alternate timeline, because too many things weird. Well, when you take a ship from our timeline and shun it over there, guess what? Because you figure the Terran Empire is not necessarily the most innovative bunch around. Brutal, regimes are not necessarily the most inventive. And when you're delivered a ship 100 years more advanced, you're going to stick with that sucker. But also going on with my theory of Star Trek's temporal dynamics is the timelines are always trying to realign and get matched back up. Same things happen in different timelines, but for very different reasons, because what happens in the original timeline, that Kirk gets command of the Enterprise, relieving Captain Pike. Well, he gets promoted to fleet captain. In the Mirror universe, you still got to have, it's still forcing Kirk to be in, as captain. But in that thing, he gets there by assassinating Christopher Pike. So again, certain people are killed, some people live on. But it's all in service of trying to hit these, temporal hard points. I forget the exact term in Doctor Who, but it's you keep and as relating to Picard. The reasons given for Picard being his essence being transferred into a robot body were totally idiotic, and the whole story made no sense. But you figured that you pick those key moments, and figure in the main timeline they probably hit those points, making a lot more sense. The logic was probably there, but we don't know that because we didn't see the prime timeline. We saw these idiots over in the two timelines over. And then season 2 comes along again. They viewed every season as a reboot on Picard, so they really paid very little attention to what happened before. Get a little closer. They had Q, well, again, not the same Q because Q's dying. No, I don't think so. And it's Q. Who knows what game he's playing? And then season 3 comes along. That's another reboot as far as they're concerned. So they gave Natalis whatever they want. Just you can't change these key points. One of them being Picard in the robot body. And Riker's kid dying of some disease. I don't think they went into the whole synth thing. Well, even the synth ban, you could come up with a better reason why there was a ban on development of androids for a while. Don't even have to bring up Romulus or if something happened and like, okay, we're going to put a stop on this for a while. Nobody's rights are being stampled on. You can make it. You can rationalize anything you want as far as that goes. One, because it's an alternate timeline, so it's not canon anyway, so who cares? But I'm figuring Picard is like that's as close as you're going to get so far. If it's almost lined up, it's almost rejoined the main timeline. And at that point, anything happened with 1 and 2, gone. They retconned out. It's overtaken by the mainline timeline, and all this other stuff just falls by the wayside. But I kind of going with the thing of like, just important to show the current crop Discovery is like I don't even rate it. It's the whole thing of your show is either canon compliant or non-canon. That's non-canon. Sorry. And that's why I'm still going to go through the encyclopedia back there what it is with some highlighters and start nope. That doesn't. Just start scratching on all the crap that came from JJ or from Discovery. So that all that's left is the actual record. And Lower Decks, that one is completely canon compliant. Every time something's come up where they would be an opportunity to reference something in Discovery or Strange, they don't do it. They stick to established canon. So either original series or animated or next gen or something else. When they went to DS9, it's a full-on crossover with DS9. You got Nana Visitor and Armin Shimerman there doing, and they hadn't lost a beat. I mean, like that whole thing. I have principles. No, you don't. That was that was right out of DS9. So Lower and Prodigy, the only thing they might have, is like there was a display where they're just throwing a bunch of graphics, and then there's a little crudely drawn picture of a Discovery thing. But yeah, there's graphics only count for so much. They're filling stuff online. Everything else, though, especially when the episode Kobayashi Maru, where Dal is trying to take, and who did he call up? Spock, Uhura, Scotty, Crusher, Odo, and they're all the old, it's Nimoy, it's Nichelle Nichols, it's Jimmy Doohan. They're not pulling anything from JJ or Kurtzman. When they come across the Galileo and that one, where everyone's cosplaying, it's the Galileo. It is a Type F shuttlecraft. I'm sorry, it was the Galileo. That poor thing, but whatever. And the technical bit's a little weird on how that worked, but whatever. The only sniggling thing on that one is, sorry, but Jacob Pog does not look like a Tellarite. I'm waiting for an explanation of why he looks like a Talaxian. And they had him on that sleeper ship, still looking like a Talaxian. But the sleeper ship was like pre-Federation. So I'm still waiting for an explanation. But everything else is lined up fine, so I'm going to take him. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that there is an explanation somewhere. Like maybe somehow a Talaxian wandered into Tellarite space, and I don't know. There are ways to explain it, but I'm waiting to hear theirs. Yeah. So Prodigy and Lower Decks, I consider them important in that, yes, there's still stuff to be mined from. You don't have to remake everything for modern audiences. There's still plenty of good stuff in the main timeline, in the canon you can pull from and build some good stuff there. And you want to talk about animated series references? Lower Decks has them by the wazoo. That is the most direct reference to the animated series. They even worked in the big 40-foot tall Spock from the Infinite Vulcan, his skeleton. But yep, they canonized that one. You had when they're fighting over a freighter, an old wreckage of an old freighter. It's one from the animated series. You had Ransom with a pad, and there's a screen cap from animated series of Kirk and Spock. Yep. I still say, Mike McMahon, if this comes across your thing, if you do a crossover with the animated series, the perfect thing would be to suddenly everyone looks like they were in that same animation style, and the same music and everything else, right out of Filmation. Yeah. But I'm not the only one who's done this, so I'm not laying claim to it. Here's the use you want. That's a perfect gag. Buy right into it, But Discovery, nope. Strange New Worlds, nope. Because like the thing with a ship, or and the fact they're paying no attention whatsoever to the timeline. You've got T'Pring and all kinds of things. And the animated, the original show, in the if any information they gave, it was like Spock and T'Pring hands might not have seen each other since they were 7. Now Dorothy Fontana elaborates more, that it wasn't quite that long, but it was still a very long time, and they didn't leave on the greatest of terms. Spock was about to ship out on the Enterprise. Sark was still not talking to him. He had Amanda, was kind of the intermediary, relating what Sark was telling her in her ear, and just, sorry, I'm not changing my mind. I'm going to Starfleet. Well, then you don't bother coming back, type of thing. And there was a brief meeting with T'Pring about how he's going off to Starfleet, and it's like, okay, and then there's Stans around the corner, waiting for Spock to leave. But he sure as hell wasn't, carrying on with T'Pring during this time. So yeah, they've Strange New Worlds has taken anything and just chucked it out the damn airlock. Plus the fact that other than Pike, Spock, and Number One, it's like nobody else on that ship should really be there in those positions. Chapel certainly shouldn't be there. And Benga has no business being there. Where the hell's Dr. Boyce? Where's Jose Tyler? Where's the Owen Colt? Like they're bringing in people that have no business, but they're totally ignoring the people that were established as being there. And again, the ship is, like 3 times the size of the original, with no explanation. I think one of the I think that Drexler gets on is stop thinking in 20th century, terms as far as how the ship operates and how much room you really need. Because there's not enough room for 430 people on this thing. you could grip all 430 and really red, a spot about that big right there. You can cram all 430 people right there, and nobody be stepping on each other's toes. So yeah, there's plenty of room for everyone to have their own quarters, even enlisted. Although personally, when I was trying to lay out the internals of the ship, the lower rank, lieutenants and ensigns and lieutenants would probably have a bunkmate, unless they were in the in a kind of head staff position. I think like Uhura, head of communications, she would have her own quarters. But just the run of the mill lieutenants and lieutenant JGs and ensigns, they would probably have bunkmates. And the enlisted guys, they would probably be like maybe 4 to a room. And the guys in rotation down in engineering, in the lower, the engineering home, secondary home. I figure, above engineering, I figured there's like a big barracks type thing. We had like maybe 20 guys there, and they would rotate. That wouldn't be their permanent quarters. They're just down there when they're serving down below. They would rotate back up, to the saucer. More people, So. But that'd be it, Otherwise, everyone, there's no reason why everyone could not have their own quarters, and you still have room for 13 science labs and everything else, Because we keep thinking, some of these things, it'd be big, but no, not necessarily. Waste extraction, and then the big lot of plumbing here, A lot of devices we think we need a big entire room could probably fit in this size, I mean, one of the things that offended Drexler was when they depicted the Enterprise being built in the trailers for JJ, and they're showing this thing like at the Titanic, it's being built in the dry docks of Belfast. It's like, what? You're not gonna have guys crawling on everything with welding torches and stuff like that. I think he pointed that the dry dock in the motion picture looks, if you look at it, it could very well be a giant 3D printer. They could be the thing going out and just kind of spinning out the hull like a web. You just wouldn't have big heavy plates being welded together type thing. It's like that's stop thinking 20th century shipyard thing. I was just a fan of the fact they showed it being built on the ground. Do you know anything about this sort of thing? That was established and I think the original pitch for the show in '64 said the ship was built in orbit. But because of that, let me dig up that picture. No, I've done the right programs on this computer. But this picture, that like early '90s, somebody did photoshopped or something, done a picture of a Newport News shipyard where they're building an aircraft carrier and inserted one of these models of the Enterprise. And it's a cute little picture, but designed to show how big the ship was. But someone showed that to JJ. Yeah, I want to see. He went for cool imagings. He wanted that looked like a cool picture. I like, go do that. Doesn't matter. It made a lick of sense. The same thing with little Jim Kirk, launching this ancient Corvette off a cliff, end of the Big Canyon in Iowa. Iowa is not known for its gigantic canyons. I don't know what the hell, there's so much of that movie is done strictly for the cool factor, and that's like the second you stop and think about it, it's like, this was stupid. That was one of the dumbest movies ever made. And before encounters with, but I made a lot of money. Did it really? It was very expensive. And if you go to the metric of it has to make like 2 or 3 times its production budget to break even, it's like, I don't think that movie made a hell of a lot of money, if at all. Like, adjusted for inflation, I said, I think I'm interested if we can pull the production costs of this movie up. and then you do a rough guesstimate of how the profitability was. Because one thing for Star Trek 2, it made slightly less at the box office for a while than Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but it was a hell of a lot more profitable because everything was already in place. All they really did was, new uniforms and redecorate the sets a bit. But for the most part, the sets are already there. There was a lot of stock footage used in that one. So a lot of reuse of shots of the motion picture. So they, again, when you hand it over to the TV side of production, which is what they did under Harve Bennett, they know how to, start pruning the budget. The movie side, they can be a little free with the cash sometimes. But TV, it's like you cut the budget or you're fired. Yeah. So I think as far as profitability goes, that's where a lot, but they wanted them Marvel bucks, so they brought in JJ for some strange reason and thought they were going to make $1 billion. No Star Trek movie is going to make $1 billion. Okay, the first JJ was the closest you're going to get, and the rest of them started falling off from that point on. In the Darkness, didn't make quite as much, and had the advantage of being an even bigger insulting movie because they had done a poll shortly before it came out, which thing is, what do you not want them to do? And topping that list was don't try and remake Khan. What do? They try and remake Khan, and they lied about it. That's even bigger unforgiveness. They lied to the audience. Audiences do not forget that sort of thing. You do that, you have destroyed what goodwill you have. And we tend to hold grudges. Okay, so that again, so when Star Trek Beyond comes out, now not buying again. And someone was, just like the original. No, it wasn't like the original series. It was just as dumb as the last two movies. The whole thing. Star Trek used to be fun. It was never dumb, stupid fun. Okay, that's the thing people get forget. They keep, but it's fun. No, it's not. No, it's not fun being insulted on a regular basis by your movie. And that's what these three JJ movies did. They were insulting because they were so stupid. I mean, they're talking about, with the stuff they did in Beyond. It's Star Trek Fast and Furious because you had Kirk on a dirt bike. But even worse is they're beaming him in and it's already moving at full tilt. How the hell do you do that? How the hell does Kirk get this motorcycle going in the transporter room, full throttle, full speed, when the time they beam him? There's not enough room to even hit the throttle and even get going 2 feet there. So the logic is not there. And that was always been a hallmark of Star Trek, is they didn't insult the audience. Roddenberry had a mantra on that. There is an intelligent life form on the other side of that television tube. He was seeking out intelligent viewers. It was just like a throwback to the early days of TV when TVs were only bought by rich people. So they shot higher up. They had they put a high standard on the writing. That's why a lot of old classic live TVs, they still hold up because they're writing at a higher level. They're shooting for a pretty sophisticated audience because that's the only ones who could afford a TV at the time. It wasn't until like the 50s and 60s when everyone could afford a TV that they thought they had to dumb things down. Now we got to appeal to the idiots, because Roddenberry never bought that. No, it's still intelligent, especially science fiction fans. If you can wrap your head around the concept of most science fiction stories, an actual science fiction, not Danger with Robinson, the actual real science fiction which we're trying to do, you're tracking a more intelligent audience. You can't pander to them with stupid stuff like, with a wisecracking robot and something like you kid. You got to give them something, substantial. That's what he shot for with Star Trek. And JJ stuff just shot into them. No, we've got to make it for a general audience. in just raw numbers, one of the biggest movies they made was Star Trek 4. It didn't pander. There was no villain. That big probe was not exactly a villain there. It just came out, hey, where's the whale? And he started, where's the whale? And whapping on the planet was trying to find the whale. It was basically a force of nature that they had to go back and fix, by bringing up some whales. But that's a movie. It had fun with it. It got some laughs at it, but it never, treated the audience like a bunch of simpletons. Like, look at the pretty thing. Oh, wow. No. You treated your audience intelligently, and they rewarded you by, going to see the movie 5,000 or 6,000 times. And yeah, we had the JJ movies. They're kept well away from the rest of the Star Trek DVDs. I have a shelf in the living room with all the Star Trek movies and the film. JJ, well, it's somewhere over there. You want to watch that crap? Do it on your own time. Keep it out of my stuff. But yes, we've been at this almost an hour. I'm not going to push any further because nobody's here anyway. This is all for repeats. So, PayPal link in the description. I will probably go back and add more links later. Make this look more like a standard video, but but also we get these subscriptions. I'm eternally grateful for Brian from Popcast popping in the live stream yesterday, and hopefully we can start pushing the channel on that end and getting some people coming over, checking out what I got. And get me motivated to start making some more stuff. I am probably going to do an update on the fan film documentary I did. And I haven't really been happy with the way I read that. I think I can probably make a better reading on the script on that, and also update it because stuff has come out lately. Samuel Calkins especially. I didn't mention anything on his. So I'm going to get into that. And I need to try and get him on here once I figure out the decent set of questions to pester him with. But I would like to have an interview with him one of these days and pick his brain about doing fan films and his approach to it all, because he's able to crank out. He cranked out. He's up for a bunch of fan film awards over at Trek Nation. Not Trek Nation. Matt Miller's channel, Australia. I forget what it was. But if you follow Trek News, you know. Okay, I don't say Trek World. No, that's Steve over in Tennessee. I know what it is. Well, let me take a look. I got time to. Let me look it up here. Pull up the history here. Now they go back away because I've been watching a bunch of videos in between that, but I also don't want to name the wrong channel because they've actually done halfway good by me. So there's one time he was interviewing Ray Tessie from Nutrizone Studios in Georgia. And he's like, Trek Zone. That's it. Trek Zone. And they mentioned a Facebook post I made. They cited my real name because that's what I post on Facebook. But I did chime into the comments. Hey, thanks for calling me out. But I point out because apparently there's feud building between James Cawley's bunch and Ticonderoga with there and the Kingsland sets. Something personal that Cawley has against Vic Mignogna. I don't know. They used to be pretty tight. Now there's a war going on between those two. But they cited my thing that's like, look, if you want a perfect museum quality with everything shiny and sound effects and totally immersive, yeah, Ticonderoga. It's a but you want an actual working set. This is what it really like back in '67 on Desilu. You go to Kingsland, Georgia, because then it's like, no, the things are not all perfect. You don't have plasma screens everywhere. They duplicated a lot, even some of the technology of what they did back in the '60s. They didn't go for plasma. They duplicated a lot of the original stuff with LEDs now instead of Christmas lights. But there's a lot of static display. Slides up, projector behind. Because they were trying to, they were doing what they can to do it like the original series. And if it was good enough for them, then we can do it ourselves. And it was a little cheaper anyway. Like for the longest time, they didn't have a main view screen on that bridge. They have one now. They've recently added one. But at the time of production, they didn't have a main view. It was just an empty wall. They put a green screen up and CGI'd in. But I need to get back down there so I can actually get on that set again. Okay, now we got it. I can sit in that chair and not imagine what it would be like if there was a screen there. Instead of sitting there and not seeing the back of the brig. No, there's a screen and there's a picture on there with But yeah, okay, we're a little over an hour now, so I think let's wrap it up now. So, but yeah, I would like to get Samuel Calkins on here one time, do a little interview. But I will be updating that fan film documentary for too long. You can pull out a lot of inspiration from the guys over at Popcast, because I like that when the way Shane does it, that's a perfect narration thing. If I could get that down, I'd be golden. Might actually be able to get a radio job, but stuck with the voice I got. All right, so PayPal. Again, I'll go ahead and post the Patreon and all the other links down below. Like, share, subscribe, and we will. Let's see, once I gotta pull up the closing video, make it all match up right, nice and neat. And there it is. And we will talk at you later. Let's see if we can